Long Island Backstory with Chief Correspondent Gary Jacobs.
Good afternoon, I'm Gary Jacobs, and welcome to another edition of Long Island Backstory. Today I got a great show. It's always nice when you do the show and you get to have somebody that you're friends with. And my next guest today is attorney Vincent Grande III, and I'm proud to call him one of my good friends. And it's nice to have somebody that's in your circle of friends, and you'll see why during the show why I think it's great that he came on the show today. Vincent Grande has been practicing law for over 18 years. He practices criminal and matrimonial, which, as we've discussed before, often cross over many times. As many of my viewers know, I often have attorneys on the show because that's something I'm passionate about, is family law reform, keeping people out of court, keeping people from getting screwed, fixing the corruption in family court. And I always talk about orders of protection, how we could fight it, how we could stay out of court. But one of the things I always want to talk about is corruption, because it's a huge problem here on Long Island. Corruption with the judges, with the politicians, with the attorneys, with the law guardians. Just there's so much money and corruption in it. But invariably, even my good friend attorneys will say, please don't ask me about that. I don't want to talk about the corruption. So I asked Vin, I said, we're going to come on the show. And I said, what do you want to talk about? And he said, Gary, it's your show, whatever you want to talk about. And I said, well, you know me, I want to talk about corruption. And you're one of the few people who I know who will actually openly talk about the corruption. And you agreed. And you said, Gary, ask me anything you want.
Within reason.
And now you're throwing in the within reason, now that we're on the show. You didn't tell me within reason. So I put together a list, and he didn't give me any questions, and I said, I'm going to go ahead and ask you. So Vin, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Gary.
First question should be, because I said we do, but that doesn't mean it's true because I say it. Do we have a problem with corruption here on Long Island?
Well, we have a problem with corruption, not just on Long Island, but around the country. Unfortunately, politicians will be politicians, and politicians get promoted to be judges. And then they're expected to no longer be politicians and to just be judges. Unfortunately, some of them can't leave the political life behind, and it leads to, if not outright corruption, at a minimum, the appearance of corruption.
You see, they can't, but isn't a judge, and I'll only speak for New York, because I know some places they're appointed and some elect. There's committees, but on Long Island, isn't a judge a political position? Because they have to play the game to get nominated. We don't really vote for judges. We fake vote for judges.
They tell us we have a choice, but with cross endorsements, we really don't have a choice who we're going to vote for as a judge. There's a couple, if they can't make a deals, there'll be a contested race here or there. But at the end of the day, one of the rewards of politics is to become a judge, and they then expect the judge on their honor to stop being a politician. So they're no longer allowed to go to club meetings and political rallies unless they're running that year, and there's all kinds of loopholes there. But let's not kid ourselves. They don't give up their Kiwanis memberships, their Sons of Italy memberships, their Hibernian memberships, funerals and weddings. They're still in the loop of politics. And it's unfortunate, but some judges around here just don't take their oath that seriously.
I say it's a patronage job.
It's funny you should bring up that's a patronage job. By definition, the judge is a patronage job. Either he has to buy his spot through the party.
And they all know how to do it. If you ask somebody, how do you become a judge? What do they tell you? Well, for a couple of years, you got to go to all your political parties' dinners, and sometimes you got to buy a table, and they all know what the system is to become a judge.
Well, years ago, it had been rumored that in Nassau County, it took $50,000 down to become a Supreme Court judge. Rumor has it still goes on in this day in Suffolk.
Yeah, I've heard that it's still. I don't think it's a secret.
Well, Suffolk has an interesting mix. Although I live in Nassau, I practice primarily in Suffolk. And you have three main parties, your Republicans, your Democrats, and your Conservatives. The Conservatives have 10 or 12% of the vote, but they have an equal seat at the table because a cross endorsement there, you can't win without the Conservatives in Suffolk County. And, there's been rumors what it takes to get those spots.
Right. So, I guess the main, how did it get so bad? I don't know, because I only got involved in the system maybe 15 years ago through my divorce, and even halfway through, I didn't even realize how bad it was. It wasn't until I got involved And people started telling me, you don't understand, this is all political. It's if the lawyer donated to the judge, if he's friends with the judge, and the law guardian is friends with the judge, and they don't. And I had a horrible judge, and I'll say the name, Marion McNulty. This woman was a corrupt piece of shit. Really, a corrupt, man-hating bitch. But she even got in trouble for soliciting donations from the damn bench and posting the names of the people who donated on the wall. And what do? They censor her. But they seal the list of the people who donated the money to her. So you could be going up against somebody who's on her list.
I don't have any skin in that game. I don't have any cases currently in front of her.
Well, she's gone, thank God.
So the problem goes away.
Does go away,
but at the end of the day, it's funny that you bring up patronage. One of the things that I've been a victim of, and one of the things that I've been crusading about lately, is that New York State has a grievance committee which is to regulate attorneys. Many years ago when I was in law school, I actually did a one-semester internship there. It was a non-political organization at that point. But like anything else in politics, the powers that be figured out there's another dozen or so law secretary salary type positions there. And unfortunately, it's, in my opinion, the grievance committee has become political, has become used for patronage, and is used for retaliation for outspoken lawyers like myself.
100%.
I've been suspended once.
Really?
I got suspended for 6 months on a civil case that went bad, and then it took them 15 months to approve me to come back in. So while the appellate division said I was a bad boy, take the summer off, go fishing, it took them another 15 months to let me back in the game, and that's just wrong.
Now, I've heard a lot of attorneys, they use and they scared. I had an attorney who was speaking out, as you do, about it, and they called him in, and it was his divorce, and he was talking about the problems, and they said, if you keep doing this, we're going to suspend you on behavior unbecoming of an attorney. How bad does something have to be unbecoming of an attorney? But they sent them a message.
Oh, they send a message. It's unfortunate. Back in 1997 or 1996 when I interned there, it was an absolute non-political job. It was a division of the appellate division. It was there to take out lawyers who stole, lawyers who were convicted of a major felony, etc. I pissed someone off along the way, and I found myself in their crosshairs. I've been in their crosshairs ever since. Thank God I have a great grievance attorney, and I'm still allowed to practice law in the state of New York because I stepped on somebody's Twinkies at one point.
But the thing is, when people complain about there are bad attorneys. I think you and I run into them all the time, that are corrupt, that just are incompetent. And you go to these committees, and I tell people it's a joke. It's a joke. If they're one of the club, it doesn't matter what they did, they're not going to do anything to them. They're going to show them the thing, they're going to laugh about it. I think I heard that most of them don't even get looked at. The secretary sends out a form letter. They have all these letters of the reasons they can't address any of the issues.
I recently had a client who made a complaint about her husband's divorce attorney spending time with her minor children who are represented by a law guardian, or as we would say now, an attorney for the child. They sent back, we don't handle this until the case is over unless it's referred from a judge.
So we let the damage happen even though we know the crime is being committed?
Well, I think I was censured in the last year or so. A client of mine passed away. I was representing one of his sisters against the other sister in an order of protection case. The one sister filed, in my opinion, to delay the estate case and get to live in the house for free by playing the system for a couple of years. And I got notified that my friend had passed away in Egypt. And so I sent out a text in the middle of the night to the two sisters, to the one sister who was my client to inform her, and to the other sister to ask her for her attorney's information because I didn't maintain the file. I was representing a lawyer, so I just came in and did the case and let him handle the paperwork. I had no idea who the attorney was. In the email I sent, I said, please, if you are still represented by this woman, have her contact me. And they slapped me on the wrist for sending a letter to a woman to tell her that her brother was dead when I knew they were Jewish and time was of the essence to bury the body.
Right.
It's insane. They have one set of rules for people like me that are outspoken, and they have another set of rules for people that want to, join this bar association subcommittee or that bar association subcommittee. I don't play that game. You want to go to court? I'll give you, it's just wrong that it's become a two-tier system.
Vin, you mentioned law guardians. Isn't there another set of rules for law guardians?
Well,
I mean, what do you do when your law guardian is doing the wrong thing. There's rules of the law guardian. Nobody follows the rules of the law guardian. You know, you and I have been in cases where law guardians testify, not under oath. They get up there and they're a lawyer just like you. You can't testify, but they and you know, and the other case you're talking about where they met with the other client. I mean, these are crazy,
insane situations.
Totally insane.
You know, I have to be very careful. I'm subject to a gag order on that one particular case, so I'm trying to be very generic without, you know, crossing the line and finding myself 30 days in jail in Suffolk County. But, you know, the other problem that we have with the law guardians is it's a select few. In Suffolk County, there's the same dozen who are there every day who make full-time, you know, it's their full-time career being the attorney for various children. And many of them do a very good job at it.
Some of them, not many of them.
Some of them. Okay, I'm going to go with at least half.
Okay.
I have some positive.
Not many, but okay.
I've had some positive experiences in my 18 years. But, you know, then you have the other issue you know, they're all paid by the county. So it becomes the judge's favorites who gets appointed to what. Again, almost another form of patronage.
And let me say, when you say judge's favorites, to me what that means is they do the dirty work for the judge. So the judge lets them know, look, in this case, I want the mother to lose custody, and the law guardian guides everybody towards that.
Well,
you know,
I don't know that to be true. I've seen indications of that over the years. When I say the judge's favorite, that's the one who doesn't necessarily rock the boat, or the one who makes sure that she gets to that case in the morning so that the judge doesn't have to work that afternoon. You know, one of the biggest beefs I have is as a private attorney in the family court system as well as in the matrimonial, you can spend 2-3 hours waiting for a law guardian to come from another part. The system revolves around them, and rather than open up the total number of qualified candidates to be in the law guardian program, they seem to be the engine driving the train in matrimonial and in a lot of the family court cases.
Well, let's not forget, somebody's paying you a couple $100 an hour to sit there and wait. That's a lot of money.
Well, and it's, you know, sometimes you just have to take an hour or two off because I'm sitting next to him reading the newspaper all morning, and I don't have it in me to say, look, you know, yeah, I've read the paper, and that's, you know, $745 or whatever the number is. You know, you've been sitting next to me. We've been, you know, just chatting about current events. I can't get it on any sooner. You know, one of the issues I have right now is I have a woman who's facing some criminal charges for failing to take her sunglasses off in a courtroom. She was arrested by the court officers. I keep asking for this case to be transferred to either Nassau, Queens, or Westchester because I fear that if I do a good job and get her acquitted on all 3 of these charges, I could be waiting all day in the family court system for a court officer to call my case. I don't know that, but that's my fear, and that would interfere with making a living. You know, the system is run by the inmates at this point. The process has gotten out of control.
So let's talk about judges. Many people watching will say, well, people who become judges are the best of the best. And maybe that's the way it should be. The best lawyers become the best judges. People are experienced in family law. They become a family law judge. People would be shocked to know that many times, not all the time, we know, many times it's the bottom of the barrel. It's the attorney who can't make a good living as a private attorney and ends up becoming a judge. We get a lot of that. We also get judges who have no experience in family law, and they throw them in. The first thing they do is, you're a family court, you're handling divorce cases, because nobody wants to do it. And you're dealing with people's lives. There's no jury. You could put people in jail without a jury. You know, that's more dangerous than a criminal court, because at least there's a jury. You know, so that's, I think, a problem that people don't realize. We really don't have a lot of good judges. And the good judges sink to the bottom. They don't raise to the top. The people who play the game, put people in jail, hit people with big fines, to me, those are the ones who rise up to the top. What do you think?
Well, there's 2 schools of thought on that. You know, if a lot of people, I was not a traditional law student. It was a midlife career change for me. I went back in my mid-30s. Had I gone to law school right out of college, perhaps I would have taken a more traditional approach, had gotten a job for a while in a county attorney's office or a district attorney's office, and had 5 or 7 or 10 years in the state pension system. Then went out and did private practice, and then what better way to live happily ever after is to get elected to something with 10 years with, you know, close to a $200,000 salary with benefits.
And you don't have to show up till 10, 11 o'clock. Nobody cares.
Well, I mean, some are conscientious, some are not.
Absolutely, there's some good ones, but
you know,
a lot
unfortunately, a lot of my time during the week is spent waiting. whether it be for a judge, whether it be for the DAs to come down, whether it be for the sheriff to finally get the prisoners to the courthouse on time. One of the problems we have in Central Islip is we don't have enough court officers. So certain courtrooms won't open until 10:30 or 11. If you have to surrender a prisoner, if somebody owes the county 2 or 4 weeks on some minor charge, you have to usually wait until the afternoon to get the 2 court officers to handcuff them and bring them down to the jail cell. It's a waste of resources. I mean, the place is just mismanaged to the hilt.
So let me ask you this, what does somebody do when they're in court and they find out that they have a corrupt judge? And when I say corrupt, and I think we alluded to this earlier, that doesn't necessarily mean that somebody's going in there and handing them money, because that's probably not that common that somebody goes in and says to a judge, here's $10,000, give my client custody. I don't think that's as common, but it is a little bit more common. You're a favor, the judge will do a favor, they like the person, and they don't really rule on the merits of the case, and it becomes obvious sometimes. What does somebody do? Their lawyers aren't going to say it to the judge. They're not going to protect the record, so you can't go to the appellate court. So what do you do?
Well, you have to protect the record.
But most lawyers won't, you know that.
That's why I'm always in trouble. I go out of my way to protect the record, and I'm not a stranger to go to Brooklyn.
But don't the judges tell you? Many times they try to shut you up when you protect the record.
Lock me up. I've many a time put a toothbrush out on the table in the afternoon. Ready to do what you got to do, Judge.
So what does somebody do? They get a judge who they could, sometimes your client's not going to get a good deal. Sometimes it's fact driven, sometimes it's personality driven, and sometimes it's politically driven. You can't, everybody has human nature. Some judges are going to like some lawyers better than others. Some judges are going to be more comfortable to speak to attorneys candidly. I mean, I'm doing a case right now where I'm the 3rd or 4th lawyer in, and I was told when I joined up for the case, you've got an uphill battle. So I don't know why the decisions were made that early in a process, but you still got to give the person the best representation that you know how. If you have to break a few eggs to make the omelet, so be it. If you have to file a federal civil lawsuit action, so be it. But who does it? Nobody wants to file these actions.
Litigation is expensive. Every once in a while I get benevolent and take a pro bono here and there. And
you're gonna wish you didn't say that on the show.
Well, yeah, I've gotten smarter in my older age. But every once in a while you got to do what's right. The bottom line is, I think I have a fairly decent moral code. I do what I feel is correct, and if people get in my way and have a problem with it, so be it. I've been sanctioned before. I'm sure I'll be sanctioned again. They don't like outspoken people.
No, they don't.
They don't like people who will come on this show and say some of the things that I've said in the last 15 or 20 minutes. I'm sure there'll be repercussions, but you know what? Spell my name right. I mean, that's pretty much all you can say at this point. I mean, one of the bigger problems I see in Suffolk County right now is we have a very politically ambitious DA. I mean, we have a judge who was recently arrested for breaking into his neighbor's house and stealing somebody's panties, allegedly. And this DA hasn't seen fit to put a special prosecutor on it yet. Why? In my opinion, because he wants more press conferences. This is a stepping stone. He was the police commissioner for a year and a half, claimed he eradicated MS-13 in his 18 or 24 months.
With the federal government coming in and doing it.
Well, somebody has to.
Which is funny.
But I mean, the last police commissioner didn't want the feds around for whatever reasons, what they might uncover.
I think we know why.
Well, I'm still not looking to get sued tonight.
So, talking about the new sheriff in town, all these changes that were going to happen, I don't see shit happening. Honestly, nobody's scared. The DA's office, in my opinion, is a fucking joke. They are a fucking joke. They don't go after the right people, and they incarcerate the wrong people. They're not any different than the other one. The DA's office is a joke. Well, ask them to go after a corrupt judge, a corrupt court officer. They won't do it. Well, they'll go after somebody who's going to get them in the news.
Well, that's my fear with this particular DA. He loves his press conferences. We used to say, 100 years ago when I first started in corporate America, there's those people that you'll be working for in the next couple of years because they're the ones who aren't doing any work and they're just moving around. I don't want to speak ill of the man. I have to work in the system every day. He brought in some very competent people under him.
I've heard that he brought in some good people.
He brought in some very good people, some of whom are friends of mine for many years, some of whom I've gone to school with, had lunch with over the last 15 or 20 years. But the DA himself is the guy who's supposed to be driving the train. I mean, and as far as the judiciary goes, we had I'm bad with names, but we had a judge in the last 6 months texting hints to the prosecution during a trial. Doesn't get canned. She just gets sent out to an out of court,
Right.
one of the outlying court.
They get another job.
She's still a judge. She's just out in wherever the hell it is, Patchogue or Sayville or one of the outer courts.
Right.
Get her out of the spotlight for a while. But there's no, one of the things I've always discussed with my friends at lunch. We have a lot of politicians who have become judges, and they've never practiced law. Some of the better judges that I've encountered over the last 18 years are the guys who made a living being an attorney for 20 years or 25 years. And when I say made a living being an attorney, not as a town attorney and not as an assistant in some office somewhere getting a W-2 every year, having to miss dinner and meeting with clients, having to, look at the client and, get that person to hire you, get that person to put trust in you so that you can handle. Most people are only in the system once or twice in their entire life. They need the guidance. The problem we've got is that, a lot of the judges will say things to an attorney that gets you fired from your client. Like the judge will be like, well, why did you bring that motion, counsel? Well, I thought it was in my client's best interest. If you don't, bring me up to the bench. Don't be having a problem with me in front of my client where, I get a stop check, cancel stop payment on a check, and I've lost the client because you're showing your lack of impartiality when you do that.
One of the things that comes up to Vin, a lot of people who have been in court, the judge will say, let's have a conference. And they call the lawyers into the back room. And a lot of people fear that that's where a lot of the corruption takes place because it's off the record. And I've heard it, Vin. It's hysterical to listen to as a third party when I'm there in the capacity of Americans for Legal Reform. I hear the husband's lawyer go up to the husband and go, it was great. The judge said, this is good, I'm doing a good job. Then the wife's lawyer goes up to the wife and goes, it went great for us today. The judge told us this. First of all, half the time the judge wasn't even there. It was the judge's clerk that was there. But people are worried about that. And I know a lot of people say, I told my lawyer, no more conferences. I want everything on the record because I don't trust my lawyer. Should people be worried about these conferences? And from your perspective and in other cases, because you heard other lawyers too, should people be worried about these conferences? And is it a good idea to tell your attorney no more conferences behind closed doors?
Well, conferences are a two-edged sword. You can go back in the back of the room and have a more candid discussion and work towards a resolution. It's always better to resolve matrimonial cases than to litigate matrimonial cases. You at least know what you're getting, and you're saving probably $35,000 to $50,000 on each side on the average divorce. That being said, if you don't trust your lawyer to be in the back having a conference for your case, my opinion, you should get a different lawyer at that point. Because if you don't have the faith in your attorney to do what's right, there's always going to be public relations. Everybody's going to come out and say, yeah, we did real well. It's the lawyer that has no problem losing a client or two that says, look, here's the two problems on your case as the judge laid it out. You can't lie to your clients. I mean, you're there representing them. You can get a lot more done in a conference than doing it on the record. And quite frankly, some of the things that are discussed in conferences should not ever be on the record. It concerns the children. It could concern the mental capacity of the principals. Many things, it could be their finances that they don't want in an open courtroom being discussed. So conferences have their place. It's unfortunate that, the process does sometimes get abused.
Yeah, because I do see people sometimes come out of the conference, they go, well, the judge said you're going to lose, so we got to work towards a settlement.
And that's a damn good lawyer if he's going to tell his client that that's where we're at.
That's what the judge said, but you know what? People deserve the day in court and sometimes the judge, but what I see is it's great, the lawyer should tell their client, but the lawyer will say, so we got to settle. And I say, no, you don't have to. The judge, your lawyer is telling you that, but sometimes the lawyer then pressures their client into settling. And you know as well as I do, a good lawyer sometimes in a trial can turn the judge around.
Absolutely,
and
but there's
can win an appeal.
But there's always the risk that it goes real bad. If a judge is signaling that this is what he's thinking of doing, or the law secretary is saying, check the case law on this one, sometimes you have to take the hints because sometimes they're right. I mean, I had one a couple years ago. They had been separated for 25 or 30 years, but they still owned a house together. So there's all kinds of case law. How do you value the house that the wife moved out of 25 years ago that the husband's made all the payments since then on the house, but she still owns half of it. You know, there's always going to be something interesting one morning or the other.
And if we got to go through really quick because I only got a few minutes left. But another thing, people, when they get a bad judge, people always come to me and say, "I'm going to ask the judge to recuse." And I've seen judges recuse many times. I've seen judges get pissed at lawyers. And I think you had a post on Facebook, something, if you haven't been kicked out of a judge's courtroom, you haven't been practicing long enough, or something to that effect.
I've got a couple judges in both Nassau and a few more in Suffolk that if I sign up to the case, they will recuse themselves.
But how do you get a judge who's not doing the right thing? Does it make sense to file a motion to recuse? Because I've never seen them be successful.
If the judge thinks he's doing right, the only way, in my opinion, you're going to get a judge to recuse himself is that he has a relationship with one of the principals.
But he knows that, so why do you have to file a motion for it?
Well, I mean, sometimes you have to remind them.
Okay.
Okay, I mean, you know, sometimes you have to remind the judge that, you know, we've had problems in the past. You don't want me on this one. You know, I have no fear going to Brooklyn and asking for things to be looked at. You know, one of the things, I'm not really good at appeals, but I sub them out to attorneys who do nothing but appeals.
Is anybody good at appeals? I see.
Yeah, there are guys that go home and read that stuff every night.
They're good at it, but what's the success rate?
If the facts and the law is on your side and the judge clearly stuck it to you, you should get a fair shot. 50%.
Okay, I tell people there's a 90% chance you're going to lose.
I don't think it's that high. Again, it depends, fact and law specific.
Right.
You know, some cases the judge is just clearly wrong. I mean, I recently looked at one. My opinion is that it was written up one way, the judge wanted it a different way, and they didn't take out all of the, shall we say, clauses and paragraphs when they changed it. So things like that, I think you're going to have a high success rate on appeal.
If you got a bad judge who's already screwing you, does it make sense to file a complaint with the Judicial Review Board, which is a joke?
I would say not. I would say subconsciously you're going to get a worse deal along the way if it comes out. I mean, I had one a couple of years back. A family court judge issued orders of protection between 3 siblings and then scheduled the hearing 11 and a half months later. So these 3 siblings, the one sibling had an order of protection against the other 2, and the other 2 had to surrender their firearms, avoid contact, keeping in mind that the other 2 owned 2/3 of the house that the woman who has the OP is living in. So, I mean, best defense is a good offense, but at the end of the day, there's nothing in the code that requires the hearing timely. So you're being stripped of your property rights, you're being stripped of your Second Amendment rights, and the judge was within his power to schedule it 11 and a half months out. And that's just wrong. We still live in America. You know, you can lose. If you lose fair and square, that's one thing. But give me the day in court for those people.
I fight by the rule, something like it has to be in a reasonable amount of time. But how can anybody say? But if you don't ask for it on the record.
Oh, I asked for it on the record. I was tossed out of the courtroom.
But at least I've seen people just say, "Oh, my lawyer says nothing I can do." And in 2 years they get an order of protection. They never get a day in court. And I said, "Did you ever ask for it on the record?" Well, no. You've been conferences.
Yeah.
You got to ask for it.
You got to. I mean,
you got to preserve the record.
I went in and jumped up and down, and I was like, "This is ridiculous."
That's what you can do.
I mean, at the end of the day, the judge gave us 2 hours of a hearing, 11 and a half months out, and then 3 or 4 months later scheduled that trial to be continued. That particular client passed away before I could clear his name. As to the other sibling, it was easier to just agree to the order of protection because I could get it over with prior to the initial court date that I could get through the system. I mean, those are the types of abuses that need to be addressed.
Well, Vin Grande, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me, Gary.
Call you a friend,
and you.
You're a good guy, and you know, not just in your capacity as an attorney, but you know, you got a good heart.
Thank you, Gary. And from a guy who does as much charity work for the system as you, I appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight.
I'm Gary Jacobs, and thank you for joining us along on Backstory. If you want to look up more information, you can go to Vincent Grande III on Facebook and send him a message, and I'm sure he'll get back to you. We'll see you next week.
Long Island Backstory is made possible in part by Americans for Legal Reform, the oldest, most successful legal group in the world. P.O. Box 2679, Huntington Station, New York 11746. Telephone 631-421-6390. Website Americans4legalreform.com.